Jai Shri Ram. Some very interesting laws of the universe. The three laws of thermodynamics. You cannot win. Second, you can break even only on a very, very cold day. Third, it never gets that cold. Okay. Murphy's law. If anything can go wrong, it will. In any field of scientific endeavor, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Left to themselves, things will go from bad to worse. If there is a possibility of several things going wrong, the one that will go wrong is the one that will do the most damage. Nature always sides with the hidden flaw. Mother Nature is a bitch. If everything seems to be going well, you obviously overlooked something. Now, the nine laws of disillusionment of the true liberal by Marion J. Levy. Large numbers of things are determined and therefore not subject to change. Anticipated events never live up to expectations. That segment of the community with which one has the greatest sympathy as a liberal inevitably turns out to be one of the most narrow minded and bigoted segments of the community. Always pray that your opposition be wicked. In wickedness, there is a strong strain toward rationality. Therefore, there is always the possibility, in theory, of handling the wicked by outthinking them. Corollary 1. Good intentions randomize behavior. Corollary 2. If good intentions are combined with stupidity, it is impossible to outthink them. In unanimity, there is cowardice and uncritical thinking. To have a sense of humor is to be a tragic figure. To know thyself is the ultimate form of aggression. No amount of genius can overcome a preoccupation with detail. Only God can make a random selection. This one is good. No amount of genius can overcome a preoccupation with detail. I think we must get over this preoccupation with detail. At some point, we must say, okay, I'm ready and get into the fight, get into the action. Okay. Eigner's axiom. No matter how well you perform your job, a superior will seek to modify the results. The aeroplane law. When the plane you are on is late, the plane you want to transfer to is on time. Baruch's observation. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Then Suslik's surgical extension. If all you have is a scalpel, everything needs a suture. Bedfellow's rule. The one who snores will always fall asleep first. Bernie's law. Don't worry about what people think of you. They don't. And his mother's observation. The innate animosity of inanimate objects. I don't understand what this means. Berra's second law. Anyone who is popular is bound to be disliked. Blair's observation. The best laid plans of mice and men are usually about equal. Busey's law. Nothing is ever accomplished by a reasonable man. The bureaucracy principle. Only a bureaucracy can fight a bureaucracy. Cole's law. Thinly sliced cabbage. Dedera's law of probabilities. In a three-story building served by one elevator, 9 times out of 10 the elevator car will be on a floor when you are not, where you are not. Delot's law of certainties. The more actual data there is, the less certain the explanation. Suslik's religious corollary. When there is no data, there is complete certainty. When there is no data, there is complete certainty. Ittore's observation. The other line always moves faster. This happens in many queues that we stand. First law of aviation. Takeoff is optional. Landing is compulsory. First law of debate. Never argue with a fool. People might not know the difference. First law of sociogenetics. Celibacy is not hereditary. First law of travel. It always takes long to get there than to get back. Glasner's law. If it says one size fits all, It doesn't fit anyone. Golden Stern's rules: always hire a rich lawyer, never buy from a rich salesman. Oh, Gaude's axiom: a meeting is an event at which the minutes are kept and hours are lost. Gutteleri's law of inertia: where there is a will, there is a won't. Where there is a will, there is a won't. Harry's lament: all the good ones are already taken. Helga's rule: say no and then negotiate. Say no and then negotiate. Heller's law: the first myth of management is that it exists. Harishar's second rule: the label new and or improved means the price went up. Oliver Herford's rule of publishing: a manuscript is something submitted in haste and returned at leisure. And Howden's law: you remember to mail a letter only when you are nowhere near a mailbox. Hockett's fundamental principle of mathematicizing: if you know exactly how to, you don't have to. Howie's law: everyone has a scheme that will not work. Munder's corollary to Howie's law: everyone who does not work has a scheme that does. Imbesi's law of conservation of filth: in order for something to become clean, something else must become dirty. Freeman's extension: but you can get everything dirty without getting anything clean. Jacquin's postulate on democratic government: no man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session. Las Vegas law: never bet on a loser because you think his luck is bound to change. Just because you think his luck is bound to change, no, then don't bet on him. Law of probable dispersal: whatever hits the fan will not be evenly distributed. Lieberman's law: everybody lies, but it doesn't matter since nobody listens. Lynch's law: when the going gets tough, everyone leaves. MacDonald's corollary to Murphy's law: in any given set of circumstances, the proper course of action is determined by subsequent events. Meadows' maxim: you can't push on a rope. Meyer's law: in a social situation, that which is most difficult to do is usually the right thing to do. Mitchell's law of committees: a simple problem can be made insoluble if enough meetings are held to discuss it. Mollison's bureaucracy hypothesis: if any idea can survive a bureaucratic review and be implemented, it wasn't worth doing. Mr. Cole's axiom: the sum of the intelligence on the planet is constant, the population is growing. Nagler's comment on the origin of Murphy's law: Murphy's law was not pronounced by Murphy but by another man of the same name. 90% rules of project schedules: the first 90% of the takes 10% of the time, and the last 10% takes the other 90%. Olivier's law: experience is something you don't get until just after you need it. Pfeiffer's principle: never make a decision you can get someone else to make. Puddar's law: anything that begins well ends badly. Anything that begins badly ends worse. The Pyrite rule: do unto others as was done unto you. The Q principle: the longer you wait in a line, the greater the likelihood that you are standing in the wrong line. Any horizontal surface is soon piled up. That is law of household geometry. The Roman rule: the one who says it cannot be done should never interrupt the one who is doing it. Rule of the great: when people you greatly admire appear to be thinking deep thoughts, they are probably thinking about lunch. Schopenhauer's law of entropy: if you put a spoonful of wine in a barrel full of sewage, you get sewage. If you put a spoonful of sewage in a barrel full of wine, you get sewage. Susslick's corollary to Schopenhauer's law of entropy: if you put a spoonful of science in a barrel full of politics, you get politics. If you put a spoonful of politics in a barrel full of science, you get politics. Shapiro's explanation: the grass is always greener on the other side, but that's because they use more manure. Simon's law of destiny: glory may be fleeting, but obscurity is forever. Scoff's law: a child will not spill on a dirty floor. This one is lovely. Glory may be fleeting, but obscurity is forever. Sociology's iron law of oligarchy: in every organized activity, no matter the sphere, a small number will become the oligarchical leaders and the others will follow. Hmm. Stewart's law of retroaction. It is easier to get forgiveness than permission. That's true. Suslik's scheme of priorities: if it isn't worth doing, it isn't worth doing right. Suslik's law of information transport: knowledge comes by the truckload, but wisdom arrives one mouthful at a time. Suslik's law of threes: it always takes three times to do anything right. The first time you either overshoot or undershoot. The second time you either overcompensate or undercompensate. It is not until the third time that you have a chance to get it right. I love this. This is so true. Suslik's second law of threes: I have always found my life divided into three parts: things I must do, things I ought to do, and things I want to do. With the last category being the smallest, of course. Things I must do, I ought to do, and I want to do. To my great relief, as I finally retired, I was delighted to find that almost nothing was left in the first category. Things I must do. Suslik's do's and don'ts: things I must do, things I ought to do, and things I want to do. Okay. Suslik's do's and don'ts: for every will there is a won't. Where there is a will, there is a won't. For every can, there is a can't. Immanuel Kant. Suslik's couture: ties are what administrators use to cut off the flow of blood to their brains. That's a good one. The tie cuts off the flow of blood to the brains. Dumb fellows. Suslik's observation on educational strata: high school education is learning that which most people know. Undergraduate education is learning that which most people don't know. Graduate education is learning that which no one knows. Suslik's metaphorical ego: ego is a house cat. It is nice to stroke, but watch out for the claws. It needs feeding often, and heaven help you if it gets out the front door. Loss of management. Suslik's: there is no such thing as a pet shark. If you bring in a shark to get rid of a shark, all you get is a bigger, meaner shark. First law of maps: all countries are the same size, one map page. Many Europeans do not realize the sense of scale of the US, for example. A visiting French postdoc a few years ago was bitterly disappointed to discover that he couldn't just drive from Illinois over to Colorado to go skiing for the weekend. US is 96 lakh square kilometers. India is one third, 32.8 lakh square kilometers. Anyway, US is mostly frozen, by the way. Arable land in US is just barely 20%. Fertile land in India is about 55%. Anyway, Suslik's first law of infant gravity: you cannot fall off the floor. Second law of infant gravity: it takes an infant 6 months to learn this. Cynicism is the first refuge of the romantic. He who shouts loudest has the floor. For every vision, there is an equal and opposite revision. A pipe gives a wise man time to think, and a fool something to stick into his mouth. Wilde's law of value: the more an item costs, the farther you have to send it for repairs. Ekku dooram pampichali. Westheimer's rule: to estimate the time it takes to do a task, estimate the time you think it should take, multiply it by 2, and chain the unit of measure to the next highest unit. Thus we allocate 2 days for a 1 hour task. Westner's law of suspended judgment: assumption is the mother of all screw ups. Assumption is the mother of all screw ups. I remember somebody said, don't assume anything, because if you do so, then it will make an ass, first three letters of assume, of you and me. Jai Shri Ram.